Okay, let's get into some controversy, Mike. Are you
Oh,
up to
uh,
date on the Snow White controversy and Rachel Ziegler?
I am.
Okay.
What are you going
Eh,
to ask me about that? I'm sure I've got some crazy thing to say.
well, did you see the movie?
No, I did not see the movie, Phil, and I'm not going to see the movie. I just in fairness, I don't, I can't say that I necessarily was a fan of the original Snow White. By the way, the name of the movie is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Okay, that was the original name of the original movie, and I get the new version of this. It can't have dwarfs, right? So now it's Snow White and the seven magical creatures or some bullshit that are CGI and look like crap. But oh, am I getting out there?
No, actually, you're on point in my opinion. Uh, I grew up watching Tom and Jerry and Mickey Mouse and a lot of other cartoons that I have trouble finding now because
Hmm.
some of the things that they had in there uh, were racist or questionable or whatever. So they've taken them off the air. I used to be a big Charlie Chan fan.
Mm-hmm.
I've watched every episode of Charlie Chan, but obviously that's a problematic thing. They had a white gentleman playing a
Right.
Chinese gentleman, and I get it. I get it in all of those instances. So I I just think that okay, if you did it back then and it was successful and it's considered a classic, but you know there are a lot of questionable things, just let it go.
Right.
Let that stand on its own. Don't ever touch that. I'm not even telling you to stop playing Snow
Mm-hmm.
White or something. Just don't make another one.
Yeah. Right.
Because even if you make every correction that everybody wants, then it's not Snow White anymore. There's
So
going to be a controversy when you remake it and there's controversial stuff added or taken away.
agreed, but yeah, I totally agree. However, the bigger controversy I think about this particular film is the actress, and not just her, but the two main actresses actually um, have sort of trampled on their own movie and on their own movie studio in a sense by making all sorts of comments about all sorts of things, including, by the way, Rachel, what's her name? Ziegler? Is that her name?
Ziegler,
Yeah,
Zegler.
including her basically dissing the original Snow White. Now let's just pause for 1 second here. Who's going to go watch Snow White in a movie theater by and large? It's what is that driven by? It's driven by children. Children want to go see that,
Mm-hmm.
and children are not in the least bit interested whether or not the actress behind Snow White likes, dislikes, you know, the original Snow White, whether she likes Donald Trump or doesn't like Donald Trump, whether how she feels about her co-stars and what her feelings are on Hamas or Israel or any other. Like this is a children's movie, right? So there's the first problem. I mean, like it was on full display. Basically, you had actors in the movie. Sabbath. I mean, look, the box office results of this thing were horrendous, and it's largely because, first of all, you can't alienate half of the people because who takes children to the movies? Their parents, right? So I mean, it's kind of mind staggering. I mean, they had the studio Disney, which, by the way, look, Disney has been around for years, has always been, generally speaking, has had its share of controversies, has largely been on the left, um, but even they had to end up hiring a social media handler to control their own actress because even they were like, "Oh God, she's got to shut her mouth."
Well, there's two things working at the same time. One, you have a employee that is not working in the best interest of the company. And
Right.
but you have an industry where people who are representative of the industry in recent times have been involved in politics and have been used as propaganda in politics.
Yeah.
So on one side, we can say she should just shut up and act, or like shut up and play basketball. We want our entertainers, we want our businesses to stay out of politics. I get that. But on the flip side, I can't go all the way in on her because they're like putting the whole blame on her. She was nothing but a megaphone for Disney.
Mm-hmm.
She was saying things that Disney was all right with. She was saying things that Disney propagates in their movies.
Until it reached a point where Disney realized they were going to lose money about it.
Right. So I feel like, yeah, she's got issues. I don't like her. I don't think she's a good actress. I don't think she's attractive.
I think her career is over, to be honest with you. I think people aren't going to want to touch her with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah, and I agree with that. But why is Disney going to still be around? That's my point. They are more liable in this to me than her. They were the people who literally gave her the rope to hang herself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they created some of their own controversies with, for one, they cast the people that they cast in the roles. You could argue, and this is not scientific, but I would argue that let's use her as an example. She doesn't really represent what I think most children want to see in Snow White. Like she's not cast very well. Like they could have found like her facial structure, her I don't want to say like it's not so much personality, but it's how she comes across.
She comes off as masculine.
Yeah, maybe partly that, but she's too edgy or too her face. She's just very. You don't get a warm, fuzzy feeling that the reason that the evil whatever stepmother in the original didn't like Snow White was because she was like the perfect, nice, girl next door kind of person. Like it would be like I said this to somebody the other day. It would be like what's Harry's wife there, Meghan Markle. It would be like casting her as Snow White. And that she's got like the kind of resting bitch face, like you know what I mean. Like, did I say that out loud? No, you know what I'm saying though. It doesn't.
I'm sorry, Mike.
Well, I mean, right? Like I wouldn't cast her as. So let's compare it as. So I did watch Barbie. So let's compare casting. I know, I did. Let's compare casting. What's her name as Barbie? Now she's not a perfect match for Barbie either. However, like look how well that movie did. Those actresses and actors did not open their big mouth about stupid things. They did. They did a bunch of changes to that movie as well, but.
They were attached to a brand and a story that people love. So it was going to be successful, just like what would have happened with Snow White. It was a brand and a story that all they had to do was not open their mouth.
Exactly. That's my point. All they had to do was not screw with it, and they got involved in Disney. I agree with you, Phil. Disney got all involved when what's his name from Game of Thrones started making comments about the role of short people, dwarves, and how that was portrayed. But then what happens? You go to it's like taking the what's her name off of the butter or Aunt Jemima off the syrup or what. All of a sudden, so now what are we gonna do? Just ignore people altogether? So all of those actors are starting to lose roles now. What are they going to act in?
Yeah, but check it out. They could have had Snow White kept to the same story, and had 7 little people,
Yes.
the correct term, right?
Exactly.
And they could have even since they want to address things, they could have addressed that in a cool way,
Yep.
where when she first meets them, maybe somebody calls them dwarves and she stands up for them
Corrects
and
them or
like,
something.
right.
And that's my point. So instead of doing that, instead of trying to set an example for the children that are watching the movie, and say, hey, we don't want to call them this, what do? They change it to some stupid name and put a bunch of CGI characters that look ridiculous in there with her, and totally lost the opportunity to have a learning experience, in my opinion.
And most people's thoughts, everybody has Snow White and 7 dwarfs in their mind. So when you change it to magical people, they're like, are you calling them magical people now? It still comes off as like a diss.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you couldn't have botched this whole thing up more than they did. Like the combination between the studio, the actresses, the actors, and the media involved around it was just brain dead. And you know, in the middle of a movie launch, for not to bring total politics into it, but in the middle of a movie launch, for anybody to come out and say, you know, Donald Trump is an asshole or whatever, or whatever she said, was actually quite incendiary. Whether it was about Donald Trump or somebody had said the opposite about Joe Biden or somebody on the other side, that's not what you would want to do while you're releasing a movie.
But people feel like you should have the right to say whatever you want. But nobody that works for somebody has the right to say it. Everybody bites their tongue.
Yep. You have the right to say, but you also have the right to get all the consequences that are going to occur because of it.
Yeah, and I've got the right to get rid of you if you are hurting my business.
That's right.
Mike, I want to get into another part of Snow White. Now,
Okay.
the main story is who's the fairest of them all, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they had wanted to like push some kind of political agenda or whatever, you know, about, it could have been a teaching moment, like Snow White comes and teaches her that it's not your beauty that should be the thing. It should be, what can you do that makes you the fairest of them all, or something like that. They could have made excellent points. They could have furthered the story along and modified it. And I think people would have been okay with what I just said.
Agreed.
And here's the kicker of the fairest of them all thing to me, Mike. How you gonna have Snow White look like a dog versus Gal Gadot? How you gonna have Gal Gadot? You know what I mean?
I know. That's what I mean.
She was the fairest of them all.
That's what I mean. It was totally cast wrong.
Cause she's weird looking, man. She's one of them people, when they make her up and everything and put her in a gown, she look cool.
Yep.
But she's a little weirdo looking.
Yep. I'm with you.